Will sanctuary cities survive Trump? That is the question after Congress summoned 4 Democratic mayors, including Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, to discuss whether they should exist.
So to every one of my neighbors back in Boston, know this. You belong here. This is your home. Boston es tu hogar. Boston, 是la calle. 这是你的家. This is our city. We are the safest major city in the nation because we are safe for everyone.
So Gladys, I'm going to start with you. The mayor was pretty defiant in standing 10 toes down on making Boston a sanctuary city. We know that Chelsea, where La Colaborativa is, and many other cities in the surrounding area are also sanctuary cities. Tell us what exactly is a sanctuary city and what protections does it offer?
So I think for us, the word sanctuary city is basically a safe space for any resident in the city of Chelsea, regardless where they come from, or if they're legal residents or undocumented residents. And it's about building relationship with law enforcement. So it's about building this trust, knowing that they can be a witness in a case if they see something, or if they're victim of domestic violence, they can come without feeling that if they file for a restraining order, they're not going to be incarcerated because they are undocumented. That's for us key. That is the definition of us of a sanctuary city. Basically creating a safe environment for every citizen, every resident, regardless where they come from.
And so Mirian, I mean, what Gladys is describing sounds pretty safe, but why is this being questioned on a legal level?
Sure. So yeah, just like Gladys said, sanctuary city policies tend to be policies that create a separation between local law enforcement and immigration ICE officials, right? And so, like Gladys was saying, this isn't very controversial, right? It shouldn't be, at least, because this is something that makes sure that everyone in our communities feels safe. That means that domestic violence victims feel safe to report to the police, that victims of crime and witnesses to crimes, right, are able to collaborate and work alongside local police officers to ensure that they're able to investigate the crimes that are being reported or the crimes that they're investigating. And so, you know, it really does not make sense as to why sanctuary policies are under attack, and especially because, as Gladys was saying, this is something that everybody should be, you know, cognizant of and aware of, and should be something that people, every city should be able to take control of the local policies to protect their residents, right?
And Lawyers for Civil Rights has filed a lawsuit on behalf of the cities Somerville and Chelsea, saying that the pursuit of sanctuary cities and the threat to cut funding from them is unconstitutional by the Trump administration. Tell us more.
Yes, correct. Yes. So the Constitution indicates that Congress is the one who gets to determine what conditions are put on funding. It's not the president. He can't do this through executive action, definitely not, or executive order. You know, it's really Congress who gets to make that determination. And so even then, you know, there is a lot of case law and a lot of support from courts that have indicated that localities, municipalities have the ability and the right to make their own laws, right, when it comes to local police enforcement. And everybody knows that the federal government is the one that's charged with enforcing immigration law, not local law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. And so, Brandy, we've talked about this here on Rooted with the border czar Tom Homan threatening to, quote unquote, bring hell to Boston. Not quite clear what that means exactly. And this was in response to Boston asserting that it would continue its sanctuary city practices, and especially as the administration is enforcing things like removing TPS for Haitian migrants. Now, of course, there's a lot of fear right now, right,
Absolutely.
on the cities themselves, but also on people who are here, be they documented, undocumented, and worried about their safety. How are you seeing that show up in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, so the work we do is really how do we address inequities with respect to education, housing, and health and wellness. So what happens when you think about the term sanctuary, it means a safe space. It means an inclusive space where you can see your language being spoken. You can see yourself reflected in the people you work with and the people you see. And you see other things in terms of it being a space that allows you to be you, however you show up. And when we have such rhetoric, when we have language, when we have policy changes and all those other things, it strips away the term sanctuary. And so people are fearful and people are worried. Am I going to be picked up in a raid? And, a child, some of the kids we work with, they're worried about their families, their extended families, and they're worried as they're in school trying to learn. Is my mom going to get picked up? Is my abuela going to get picked up? Or other things, or even the fear of a potential raid has them not concentrating, has them not focusing. And we've had folks come to us saying, where can we get more information? And so it's partnering with organizations like the other two to say, we need to have Know Your Rights sessions so that we distill the fear, because fear is crippling. Fear leads to folks not going to the police. Fear leads to folks not getting the services and the supports they need. Boston is the safest city for a reason. It is the number 7th best city in the United States for a reason. It is because of the protections we've put in place. And all of this rhetoric is dismantling that, or at least attempting to.
And so you mentioned people knowing their rights. What exactly are their rights in this situation if they were to be a target of deportation?
And you're saying specifically individuals, or you mean cities?
Individuals, and we should talk about cities too, but starting with individuals.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's something to always begin with as like the bottom, or like the foundation, right? Is everyone has rights under the Constitution, no matter your immigration status. Everyone has Fourth Amendment protections, right? Law enforcement, immigration officers can't just come to your door and come in without a warrant, right? So everybody should know that if police officers or immigration officials knock on your door, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to check to make sure that they have a valid warrant, right? And so what does that mean? Well, you're going to look that that it's signed by a judge, that it's on court letterhead, right? Those are the things you want to make sure that you have. Other things is that everyone has the right to remain silent, no matter what, right? And that's something that everybody should always remember, and that we should remind our constituents, our members, and community members. Those are just some rights, right?
And as far as the cities go, I mean, we know that, for instance, the Small Business Association is pulling its locations in several sanctuary cities, including threatening to pull them in Boston, threatening to pull funding away. I mentioned that at the top. So what can cities be doing right now to safeguard themselves?
Right. Well, similar to our clients, Chelsea and Somerville, right? They're standing up for their rights. They know that as municipalities, they have the right to make these policies because it keeps everyone in their communities, in their cities safe. And so they're standing up, going to court to make sure that this unlawful action is stopped. But there's also, right, things that they're doing aside from that, which is creating policies that make everyone feel safe, right? Making sure that everyone in their communities know that they can come to report, a crime, and that they can participate in being a witness or whatever it may be, and that they're not going to be at risk of deportation.
And I think that is so key because, for example, in the city of Chelsea, whenever there's criminal activity or whenever, like in a neighborhood, there's something wrong and people are aware of it, they're the ones calling Detective Medina. They're the ones calling some of the officers saying, hey, this is a beer house, this is happening here, etc. And that's exactly what we want. We want them to build that trust with the police officers, as also in case of our city, the police officers have a resident requirement, so they're your neighbors. So you want to be able to have that trust and that relationship that in addition to him wearing that uniform, he's also my neighbor. We can literally pick up a conversation that doesn't have to be about law enforcement because, families are so blended and it's a small community, and that's what we want. We want to build relationship, we're building trust, and there's a judicial system already in place that if you commit the crime, you go through that criminal, system, and then, they do whatever they need to do, and we're not against that at all. We want the same thing.
Community engagement and support is so needed. And I think for us organizationally, we're not lawyers, right? So the one thing we're focused on right now is continuing to do the good work.
Yes,
making sure that when anybody comes in our door, they get the supports they need, and then we refer them outside. But I think in order for us to get through this period we are going to have to work together and be able to provide the resources and supports that are needed.
Yeah. So and you all are mentioning the emphasis on community here, not only in terms of everyone helping out, but making everyone feel safe, whether they're a citizen, whether they were born here in the U.S., whether they're documented or undocumented. So much of this discussion about sanctuary cities folds in popular opinion and what people think about them. We hit the streets in Boston to ask folks how they're feeling about the Trump administration's targeting of cities like Boston for their sanctuary city status.
this new administration is really jumping the gun.
These people pay taxes, and I believe that they have a right to be protected with the money that they are putting into the system.
The temperature and the conversation and just the fear that's being generated is affecting kids, it's affecting parents, it's affecting families.
This is a place for everyone to flourish, no matter who you are.
It's so important that everybody feels safe.
Those people come here, to get a job, to support their family, and it's not fair that they go back to the country, and they don't come here to ask people for nothing. They come here to work.
I feel that the people that are already here need priority first. Help them, but give your people that are here already priority. So I don't object to it, but you have a waiting list for people that have been trying to get Section 8 for years. People coming from other countries, and I'm finding out that housing and vouchers like that. Take care of your own first. I don't care about helping them, but take care of your own first.
So I want to pick up right there where we left off with you, Gladys, because I know that you've been instrumental as the state has been dealing with a migrant crisis and an emergency shelter crisis, trying to help people while also balancing that with the needs that were already present in the state. What do you say to people like that who are like, yes, okay, I understand the need to help people who are coming to this country, but what about the people who are already here and in need?
So I would say to that guy, first, get your narrative straight. You cannot apply for Section 8 because Section 8 is for people that are citizens of the United States. So that is not true. The second thing is that many of our residents, for example, even our undocumented residents that work without Social Security, we get them IT numbers and they pay taxes. And they are never able to get reimbursed for those taxes. In terms of the shelter system, I run a shelter in the city of Chelsea, an EA shelter. At the beginning, we had a lot of people because of the airport-related situation that we didn't ask them to come. They were sent to us in buses, those individual newcomers. And what we have done is immediately, because they have permission to be here, we were able to find them a job, find them an apartment, and move them, and many of them are already working. In our EA system right now, we have a lot of residents that are citizens of the United States that had a crisis, a housing situation, and we are placing them, and we're doing exactly what we did with the newcomers. So our EA shelter is very diverse now, and what we have done is completely, those that have permit to work, they are, and the ones that we're receiving now, 60% of the population that we have now are residents or citizens of the United States that went through a housing crisis.
And so with all of that, no matter what happens with sanctuary cities, do you think a state like Massachusetts has the resources to continue supporting people who are coming here?
I think in terms of resources, you know what, I think always about my mom. My mom used to say, where one eats, 20 of them eats, and the food multiplies. So I think that I'm not calling on more people to come. We need to figure out an immigration reform. We need to continue. We must stop not ignoring that we have never had a comprehensive immigration reform. Mm-hmm. And let's stop blaming immigrants. Let's figure out where we're going to set these benches, right, or these laws in order for people to have access to, the ones that are here, access to becoming legalized.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, Mirian, what is the worst case scenario? Say that sanctuary cities are ruled to be unconstitutional. What happens?
Well, I mean, I don't think that would happen. I think that, we're pretty confident. And like I said, there's a lot of a lot of Supreme Court rulings and just a lot of law that has already been established that demonstrates that states do have a right to make these types of decisions. And just to clarify, sanctuary policies are not interfering with the duties of immigration officials. They're simply not, actively participating in that. Local officers are not breaking the law by not participating. If there are, in certain situations, if that is required, they would obviously do it. And so, again, I don't think that would happen just because the law is so clear on this issue. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that ultimately we already know the benefit of these types of policies. It would be, quite harmful to everyone if at some point we do change these policies and now people are afraid to, come up and share their stories and share report crimes. That's not just going to affect immigrants, it's going to affect everyone in our communities.
And I know on the legal front, I hear what you're saying about that's feeling sort of foolproof. Brandy, I do want to point out that DC has kind of removed and changed its language around sanctuary cities. It could be a thing, right, where we saw some companies doing the same with DEI. Maybe it's a precautionary measure, but is there concern when we start to see cities shifting in light of the pressure that the federal government is putting on?
There is concern, and yet there is also opportunity as well, because I definitely earned it. I'm DEI. So I think, there's ways that we can work together and figure out how do we best protect folks going forward. Maybe that is a simple policy shift here. As Gladys was saying, we need to talk about comprehensive immigration reform. And I think one of the things, as the gentleman said in the clip, is that we can do both. And it does not have to be an either or. Boston is a great city because of our newly arrived families, not in spite of. And so there are things we can do and look at, and I'm sure Boston will, because this is a period where we're all learning. This is a different face. We have not been here before. So I think we're all learning in terms of how do we move forward, policy-wise, as community members, and just in terms of our engagement.
Well, Brandy, Gladys, and Mirian, thank you all so much. There's so much to discuss. I'm sure this is not the last conversation we'll have.